Andi Mann here with Sageable, and I'm with a couple of my good mates, some experts in the industry, to talk about platform engineering. Look, this has been around for a couple of years, of course, or maybe it's around for several decades. We'll talk about that. But I've got here some really good people. Krish Subramanian, currently at Red Hat and IBM. Krish has been engaged with the DevOps community, with automation, with IT operations management for longer than I can think of. An expert in the industry. Similarly, my other good mate on the screen here, JP Morgenthal. JP is with AlixPartners right now, and again, JP has been through some amazing roles and responsibilities and is well known as an expert in the industry. And so I wanted to touch base with my two good mates to learn about platform engineering. Now, I come from an operations background. I do DevOps and all the cloudy stuff, right? Automation and stuff like that. This is relatively new in the zeitgeist. It's starting to get a lot of traction. It's starting to get a lot of heat. And I reached out to Krish and JP and with a single word question, is this real? And they both jumped on and started to explain to me why it was real. So let's start. I want to just get an understanding of what are we talking about? What is platform engineering? Hey, Krish, maybe you can start. We had a good conversation offline about this. Maybe you can start by helping me understand, how do you define this idea of platform engineering?
Okay. So when we started off with cloud, like DevOps became the go-to mantra for doing cloud, right? So I like the concept of DevOps, like as a way to get developers and operations collaborating with each other. But the way some of the vendors took the DevOps conversation is, DevOps is all about developers going and doing the operations with no need for operations team to handle everything. All those marketing buzzwords that came out, including no ops and stuff like that. So I think in the early cloud days, when the adoption was at the individual developers or small startup level, probably it made sense. The two pizza team, which Amazon brought into discussion, made sense because at least in the West Coast, you could find developers who could go deploy it into the cloud services and get their application going. But when you go to large enterprises with all the guardrails you need to put in, and also like getting that kind of talent is expensive. And if cloud is about taking the undifferentiated heavy lifting out and putting it to a third-party provider, then you shouldn't be forcing undifferentiated heavy lifting, which I call automation, operations, automation related to operation, and give it to developers and ask them to spend their time trying to automate everything. So there should be some separation between the developers and the operations team. Even though operations team used to be the one control freak that used to control everything that's happening there, and developers hating the operations team, that's what led to the frictions, right? So what we expect, platform engineering is in its early stage, so I will use the term expect. What we expect with platform engineering is to sort of develop that boundary in a much more API-centric manner, so that operations team can act like a product team, bring out the necessary infrastructure to deploy the application. So platform engineering involves operation team acting like a product team and building out the infrastructure that is needed for the application, while also ensuring the guardrails that are critical for enterprises. That's the way I see it. But I would love to get our friend JP's thought on that, because he is an expert in that too.
Yeah, JP, I mean, what I'm hearing, Krish, is it sounds like an IDE. Aren't we already there? I mean, I'm pretty sure there's more to it than that. JP, what are you feeling?
I mean, I like the direction Krish is taking, but I love also being the industry historian. And the best part about being in the DevOps community right from the start, like right after they came back from Ghent, is the first time I got involved and started talking with Patrick and people. And what I love about being a historian is to understand the root of everything, remind people what the root of DevOps was all about. And it was about Patrick Dubois, talking out to the community. He was quality assurance, and he's sitting in the middle of these two bird brain groups who can't get their act together and saying, guys, there's got to be a freaking better way, right? Because how can I test if this hand doesn't know what that hand's doing, right? And so that's what DevOps was originated out of, the desire to bring together and fill in the holes and the lack of communication between these two organizations, right? And the reason why that's important is because you said, is platform engineering going to kill DevOps? And I'm like, if you take it from the point of view that DevOps is really about collaboration, okay, and of course, John and Gene have taken it to a whole other extreme by adding in lean manufacturing concepts into software engineering, right? That's a thing, right? You wouldn't go to Toyota and say, hey, look, this guy built a new robot arm. I think it's the end of lean manufacturing. No, lean manufacturing is about the supply chain and just in time and what do I do at a station, and can I reduce the time that it takes to get these steps done and remove bottlenecks and constraints? Nobody's going to come and say, I got a new robot arm. Forget it. That whole lean stuff is all gone. Okay. And that's when you say platform engineering is into DevOps, or anybody says that, I mean, that's effectively the analogy they're saying. They're saying that a robot arm on the floor of Toyota is going to kill lean manufacturing. Not going to happen.
These are strategies instead of tactics, right? You're talking about, if you think of DevOps as a strategy, as a visionary approach to doing something, then platform engineering is one of the many tactics you use to achieve that strategy. Is that have I got that fair?
So for me, so SR or SREs that had a niche that formed to fill a particular role. DevOps formed to fill a gap in the industry. Platform engineering to me is different. Okay, and maybe it's my managed services and running outsourced application development perspective, right? But the thing that I've always I always had in the back of my head when running these teams and thinking about how we could be more efficient was, how we're taking a resource and we're 100% dedicating them to a project, okay, and they're not they're not utilized in their downtime for other things they could be working on, maybe and half of that has to do with it takes so much effort to learn the environment for one client's project. Can you imagine 2, 3? How do you switch between them, right? You could set up virtual machines and just, log into them all. But platform engineering is really around establishing that baseline footprint that you use to have all the tools in the toolbox necessary to take the application, drop it in the box, and use it. So so the developer, now, without having to worry about, do I have the right libraries in there? Do I have the right version of the app database infrastructure? Are the settings right? Is the security right? I have all that pre-planned in a box for my project. And now I can take my code and just write my code. I can get an environment that builds properly for that environment. I write my code, I put it in, and I can test it. Now, if I want to go to a different project, I got that platform already built out too, right? I don't have all these,
So this is going to help reduce waste, right? This is one of the wastes, Tom and Mary Poppendike, the wastes of software development, right? One of them, context switching, right? So if I'm a developer and I have a platform that my PE team has created for me, I can work on coding and get flow. And I've spoken about flow with both of you guys before, I think. And I can get into this flow because I'm not having to switch context from coding to solve my problem to coding to build my environment. Is that
right.
good?
That's a big part of it. When you're building, when you're a new developer to a project, it could take. Well, besides the fact that I've seen a team actually sit there a month without their laptops or access to the company's computer systems, that's a whole other story. It could take about 2 weeks to get your environment capable of being able to do a build for that project and deploy it, because it's a very exception based process. First thing is you're like, do we have? I don't have this one in hardcover. The second book that Gene and John wrote, after the Phoenix Project, right? The next one, right? That whole first section is about the woman who gets sent to this, new department, and she's got, where's this? Oh, you got to go ask him. Oh, where's this? You got to go ask that guy. Oh, where's this? How do I get access to this? 2 weeks of this crap. You're not even, productive.
Yeah.
Platform engineering is literally press a button and everything you need is there. Now you start coding and deploy.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Like platform engineering is traditional way of doing dev and operations, but the collaboration is defined by an interface which is more programmatic than the human centric. That's the way I look at it. Like how do you reduce friction?
Krish, tell me, what does it look like? What does a stack look like? So we're talking automation essentially, right? I mean, we're talking about building automated builds, standardized builds. I can see, my background in automation, I can see lots of benefits, obviously, auditability, standardization, reduced error count, faster flow. So I get a lot of this. What is a stack? You're actually in a software vendor at the moment. What does the software stack look like for platform engineering?
Yeah, so the way I look at the software stack is in the traditional days, you define the software stack for the organization or the division or the team, and developers were like told to adjust, make their application work on that stack. That's how we grew up in the legacy days. Then cloud came and said, "Hey, we are opening up all the cloud services to developers as API. Now developers can build the stack and then deploy the application on top of that." Some Silicon Valley developers could do that because they figured out how to do they understand operations as well as development. But that's not easy. If I am a Java developer, I don't have to understand what are the internals of AWS just to deploy my application. It's a waste of my valuable time. So from an organization point of view, I don't hire a Java developer, pay them a lot of money, and then ask them to sort of understand the nitty-gritties of AWS and do it. So that's where I think JP touched about it. Like when we go with an automation-centric thing, you think about, I built a robot arm and I have the entire factory line set up for Toyota. It's not as simple as that. Here, every application is unique. The application needs are unique. Automation definitely still plays a very critical role in setting up the stack. You will have a lot of automation, but you need to make sure the stack is app aware. So I use the term app aware infrastructure here. So instead of building out a generic platform, you provide a framework where the developers could define the parameters or contours of their infrastructure based on what their application needs. And then just in time, you build out the platform that is needed for the developers so that the application can be deployed. So that is how I see the platform engineering aspect.
So some of this actually, I want to point out this is like T-shaped people and I-shaped people, right? You've got your developers with I-shaped skills. You want them to have T-shaped skills, but they don't need to do everything. Sorry, JP, what were you about?
The maybe next conversation, because I don't want to take us on too deep a tangent, but it's really interesting how, from a timing perspective and innovation in the industry perspective, Pivotal came along and developers rejected it because it was opinionated. One thing that I've read about software platform engineering is there's very much what they call a paved path for developers. It's associated with this term paved path, which, if you look under the covers, or you on peel back the onion on it, is an opinionated way of doing engineering. So, but they all complained that Pivotal was a problem because it was an opinionated way to program. So I have to laugh at that. But the thing that we could look at, interestingly enough, is do you need platform engineering if you have a serverless environment? Because the serverless environment takes into account that everything's connected through the serverless environment. So if everything's already in the box, and all I need to do is deploy the code, and it does the build and the connecting to the data. You add the database service. Remember, in Pivotal, you attach a service, a database service, you attach the messaging service, you attach all these services, and they're available to your app through the API in Pivotal, right? And it would manage the scaling, the deployment, everything for you. It had build packs. It would build these things. It could build Java. It could build Python, right? It could do all these different languages. So the question is, who is platform engineering really for? Is it for people who, must have their own environment still, server huggers, or is it for, and if you adopted a serverless philosophy, do you even need that anymore?
So JP, I want to dig into that a little bit more, into the human side. You're working in a consulting business. You're not tied to any particular software or hardware brand. What's the human side of platform engineering look like? What's the teaming look like? And I'll set you up because, I love the DevOps. I come from, small dev, big ops kind of a world. My people are the ops people mostly. And these days, ops are doing what? We're doing DevOps, we're doing SecOps, we're doing DevSecOps, we're doing FinOps, we're doing BizOps, we're doing CloudOps. You mentioned we're doing SRE, so we're doing SLOs and stuff like this. Do devs have any responsibility in this, or is it just more work for ops?
It's a great question, and devs have the work that they should be doing, which is turning the business logic into an automated piece of machine-based code. Yeah. And unfortunately, the way the industry has grown, they've had to also learn how to do 50 other things. Learn how to set up a database, learn how to install, learn how to get on the cloud. You have to learn how these things just to build your stinky little piece of code, right? That's why services-oriented architecture is a huge change, right? I have an API now. I just got to send, back in the day, an XML message, and then I can send a JSON message, right? I don't need to set it up. I don't need to worry about it. It's there. I just need to know the API, right? Which is 90% of programming. I always teach people, most programming languages are all identical. The thing that makes them painful to learn is the libraries. To get anything done, you need a library. Unless you just want to count on the screen from 1 to 10, you need a library, which means you have a learning curve.
Hello world. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, that's a good question. If I can take a stab at it, because the question is so good, I want to chime in here. So in the traditional world, the ops team started with their infrastructure and defined how developers should fine-tune their application to run on that infrastructure, right? What platform engineering does is change the game towards developer, where developers define the KPIs for their application, saying that this is the kind of SLO I need. They define the contours, and then operations use automation and set of tools to build up to that to meet those KPIs. That's where the role of SRE comes in to replace traditional operations there. Their role is, how do you tame rather than build the platform to meet developers' need? How do you tame the platform to ensure that developer KPIs are met, or the KPIs set forth by the developers are met? That's the way I look at it.
I like the idea of an API, even a human API. And by the way, this also ties into ideas around shared process and known knowns, right? This is research that I did with the State of DevOps reports a couple of years ago, this idea of sharing known good patterns and processes across boundary lines. And the more boundary lines and the bigger boundary lines you share across, the better the results for your business. And so this idea of the experts in development sharing their known good pattern for what a dev platform looks like with the platform team, and then the platform team obviously sharing back with the devs the things that they know about operationalizing that platform. If that sounds like DevOps to me, but with separate roles, and I don't mind that at all.
Yeah.
Let me quickly.
JP, yeah?
You're close to something. It's more like what we've been missing in the industry as a whole, and it's been growing organically, piece by piece. As we finish one piece, we go, oh, still missing something. Still missing something. Is the ability to allow subject matter experts to focus on their area of subject expertise while contributing to a whole. Okay, I'm a security expert. My job is setting up, making sure that the environment is pristine from a security perspective. Now, that's going to impact the developers who are, what can they touch? How can they access it? What can they change, right? That's going to affect the usage, right? How do people use it? How do they access it, right? That's my domain. And in the past, you remember that we had the security guy in the Phoenix project even, right, as an example of this. In the past, I tried to dictate that. And there was a lot of pushback because the security person didn't have the wherewithal and the collaborative environment, both physically and communicatively, okay, to work and put their ideas in place without impacting negatively the other groups, right? This platform engineering thing is kind of like a bus where each subject matter expert gets to bring their subject matter expertise to bear and establish their part of the footprint. Now, if you've ever, VMware actually has a lot of this going on right now with their application development platform, right? Where the security person can write their chunk of the automation code, and then the app team can put the libraries that need to be available, and the ops people can put in how much memory and everything, and then it becomes one big deployment file where everybody's expertise is contributing, and then creates the environment, right? So think of it like that. It's like everybody can now has a medium to come together, bring their subject matter expertise without having to negatively affect one another. And then if there's a conflict, you have a common baseline in which to understand that conflict.
That is a brilliant way to, if you don't mind, that's a brilliant way to put together the definition of platform engineering, right? Like you bring in the experts with the domain knowledge so that you bring them all together so that you define the platform properly. Now, I'll use this to plug another topic, which is of my interest is with the way JP defined platform engineering. Now we know the known knowns and known unknowns. Now there is a layer of unknown unknowns, which our famous friend, my and JP's famous friend Donald Rumsfeld, that was not intentional, I misspoke. Donald Rumsfeld talked about.
Yeah.
So the unknown unknowns, it's still missing piece there. That is where AIOps come in. So these domain experts bring in the known knowns and known unknowns. Then there are grave failures that could happen. You now put the layer of AIOps on top of platform engineering. That machine learning could detect some of those grave failures. That's the vision, at least. That's the way I see it.
So that's the promise of DevOps and the feedback loop. You go back to some of the writings of Gene Kim and others, the Damien Edwards, his famous sort of feedback loop diagrams. So what we're talking about there is AI ops is now able to take the volume at scale of a cloud, or JP, you mentioned serverless. The scale, the volume, the three aspects of big data essentially. Munge those, use ML, use AI to understand what that means, and feed it back into the design of the platform. Is that right, Krish?
Yeah, that's the way. That's the way I'm looking at it. Like one way to use this there are two ways in which AIOps plays a role. By doing the predictive analytics, it stops problems before it could happen. So it's helping the SREs there. But also the feedback loop, when properly established, that is a critical thing, because now there is a lot of chatter going on about AIOps. You don't know what it is actually. There's a lot of confusion out there in the market. When that feedback loop is properly established, there is a potential to sort of take that feedback and sort of like dynamically rebuild the platform to make sure that you stop all those potential grey failures. That's the long-term vision. It's not going to happen anytime soon, though.
I like it. I like it. So
So
where
JP, I think JP is coming back.
Technology will do that to us, Chris. Look, it's just you and me. Oh no, JP's back. That's great, because I'd like to ask you, JP, following on from that. So you've got experts in dev and ops, and presumably, by the way, we're talking about enterprise platforms here. So we've probably got people from DBA or from QA or maybe even the PMO. Or,
everybody can fill in the piece. Now, think about this. You talk about productivity, okay? I'm developing, right? So the first thing is I have different incarnations or different configurations of that platform. I have everything from the wide open to the totally locked down production. Okay, so I start with my wide open version of the configuration, and developers can go in there, they can change fields, they have DBA access to the database. Then I go into the staging. So now I'm going to just change that DBA layer to the configuration for the medium security, where you must have an authorized user with rights in order to do anything. You put your app in that. Now, the first thing most of us who have built an application with wide open DBA access, every developer having DBA, is the minute you put it into the tighter configuration version, it breaks. Right? So
how do I know where you were going, JP?
Now we get through staging, we get through tests, or we get through testing. It actually works. So I've constrained the rights, and it still worked. Now I go to the uber secure environment, right? That would be the production, and I do a smoke test in there, right? Meanwhile, what am I doing here? I'm literally just changing 4 lines of the platform engineering configuration that is productive, right? That is, I have my developer, I have my test, I have my staging, smoke test, production, and I literally can just press buttons and deploy them, and I can the flow. You got a flow, so I'm actually testing that same code, start to finish. So now I have a high quality product that I am sure works in all the environments. I've made it easier for the developer by not having to constrain them during development, but limit and make sure that what they've done will actually work in production.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. In fact, before I joined my current job, I was prototyping some idea for a startup. At that time, one of the things we did was we started from the architecture level. Everything is code now. So as JP mentioned, you make everything into code, and then that defines the configuration for platform engineering. Now diagrams are code. Go to draw.io, you can export it out as a code. So XML code, and get that going. So the idea is, as a developer, you come in, put your architecture out there, click submit, and it goes converts everything into code underneath and builds a platform just suitable for what your application needs. That's the level of friction-free environment we have to go. Eventually, when the no-code, low-code approach to platform engineering becomes the norm, that's where we will end up. That's what I'm thinking.
I like that, because you're solving some real problems at the CTO level. I know about, I've talked to a bunch of people, a bunch of CTOs and clients about this. The idea of delivering a quality product. JP, you're hitting on the nail on the head. Developer productivity. We're seeing the rise of things like value stream management and value stream mapping. We're seeing the rise of FinOps, because cost control and productivity is actually a real concern. So you're letting developers dedicate. You're still providing a quality platform and a quality experience for customers, but you're allowing agility that is operable and secure, because it's all those things I mentioned. It's auditable, it's repeatable, it's known good. I've got, for you, JP, from the management consulting side, When you start to stand this kind of practice up, I got a couple of questions. Firstly, is this a new team? Have I got dev and ops, and then in the middle is platform engineering, or is this? How does it structure, and what is a project to start doing platform engineering? What does that look like?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is I'm just starting to address this with a handful of people at my company because my area, digital innovation, focuses on um, companies with large investment in technology development, okay, creation. And we help them strategically to ensure that costs are aligned, product management's properly, you know, organized, that they are that they have the right level of span and control across the engineering organization, that they are, you know, properly, you know, optimized for, you know, speed and agility, right? That's the kind of thing we do in management consulting. But ultimately, you have to touch things like DevOps. You have to touch platform engineering. You have to make sure that the organization is taking into place. Now, for me, I think it's a skill. I don't care if it's an ops or development, but my preference would be development because I see it as an engineering function. I see it as part of software engineering. But everything, as Chris said, is becoming software. IAC, infrastructure as code. Everything's code. The whole world is becoming software, right? Software-defined world, right? That's so. So it's hard to place that limitation on ops anymore. Like, oh, you don't code. You know, it's like everybody is going to have to code. I know at some point, you know, everybody's got to code in this game. But until they get better, like you and I had a brief preview discussion on this. I love, years ago, we had the librarian. They were a member of the team. Their job was to set up source code, control, do all of the make and build automation, right? It wasn't a lightweight job. I mean, they owned the product build, like everybody, you know, you got the make, you got it from them. They had all the libraries that were being used for this project, right, in a certain version. That person, I mean, that is a good example of how platform engineering could transition to a small team.
I like that a lot, not least because you're starting to attack issues like supply chain software attack, right? The supply chain vector. We saw that with SolarWinds, but we see it a lot with open source libraries, or you know, not just open source, but you know, external libraries where you don't have that visibility into it. But if you have that sort of librarian, I'm just going to throw out the Panvalet administrator. It just shows how long I've been in IT. That one person who's managing all of the inputs, so they can make sure they can check all the CVEs, they can make sure that all your software is safe and secure and doesn't have those third-party attack vectors. So again, solving a real problem that CTOs care pretty deeply about. Let me tell you, that was in every single RFP I answered last year. Hey, guys.
Really?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. As a cloud vendor, every single RFP anyone sent to us, they would want to know what was our process for managing supply chain software attacks. So you've got to deal with this stuff, right? So this is actually a pretty good answer.
That must have been because of the whole certificate issue that, or the Java library. The Java library.
It was SolarWinds. It was Spring for Shell. It was a bunch of stuff, right? Which is fair.
But remember, you don't need everybody in one place, because what you're doing is you're bringing people together. What you need is a project manager of type. It's not. Don't call it a project manager, because that would be awful.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a wrong term in this context. Yeah.
They are an engineer, but they have the added skill to be able to organize all of these people and all of the inputs.
Again, they're T-shaped people, right? I love this. I have learned so much from you both today. Thank you. What have I not asked that I should have asked because I didn't know to ask? What's the unknown for me, Krish? Is there anything that I'm missing yet?
Probably like we haven't discussed about best practices where we could bring to table with regards to platform engineering. It's a different topic on its own. Like, I think we can go deep into that. Probably in one of the future episodes, we can come back again and talk about the best practices. I think between JP and me, we have quite a few based on our work. So I think there are a few things we can talk later. I think that's one area which we could cover.
Yeah. No, that'd be great, actually. These known good practices, known good processes, best practices, if you will. Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that from the platform side, the human side, the rollout, the maturity side. What's our maturity model look like? I don't know. JP, what else have I missed?
Yeah, well, that's where you didn't miss it. You just stated it in the beginning and then never came back to it. Is this real?
Yeah.
And yes, it is, and no, it's not. Yes, I think people try to name things so that they can refer to them in a consistent way. But I think this is still amorphous. I don't think it has definition, which means it can't really have best practices and mature. It can't have maturity. It can definitely take from other things as best practices, but it's a forming area. I think it's been around for years. I think it's just, again, that evolution of I did DevOps. We got better. Now that we're communicating, wow, this is missing. That's missing. Now I got SREs for, and to me, SRE is really very specific. It's for outward facing, or production level operations, right? For things that are at scale, right? And people forget it came from Google to run Gmail. I think any and even Google people will tell you, if you're not doing something at this scale, that's overkill. Okay, so we shouldn't just dump SRE on top of the pile because it's an operational thing and it sounds like it belongs there. It's a very specific need for SRE. But the DevOps and now platform engineering, and we're learning as we go. We're getting to that point where we're allowing the people who have certain skills to be able to bring those skills to bear in a collaborative way while building, in an engineering software in an agile way that delivers fast with quality. And that's the goal, right? To me, all of this stuff is just a continuous, you know what it is? Jez had it. It's continuous delivery. That's what it is.
Yep. Continuous delivery, full stack continuous delivery. Full stack continuous delivery, yeah.
Guys, I have been so educated today. I'm going to leave it there. It's not like I don't have more questions. I just don't have more time. But we might do this all over again and get into some deeper concepts. For me, this has been a great education. I thank you both, Krish.
It would be great if we could get Jez in this conversation. It would be interesting to have his input, on this topic.
Absolutely. I'm going to talk to a lot more people about this because I think this has got legs. Of course it does. It's been around for years, as you said, JP, but we're still trying to figure out what we can do with it, I think. So I'm sort of excited about it because it brings the discipline back into ops that I've always believed should be there. So amongst other things, but JP, where can people find you if they want to ask more questions about platform engineering or, in fact, anything else?
Well, for this topic, I would prefer LinkedIn. I think, let's go to our professional network. I stay away, social media has become a hot mess. Hotter than Lindsay Lohan at 18. So LinkedIn is the best place.
Good one. Yeah, okay. Find JP Morgenthal on LinkedIn. Krish, where can people find you to have a conversation?
Yeah, I think I'm going to plus one to what JP said. In fact, I want to leave with this same note which JP was talking about. We are at a state where the platform engineering is at a state where DevOps was before the Phoenix project. So we will soon have to define everything and take it forward. So if you want to have the conversation, come to LinkedIn. It's krishnan.subramanian at LinkedIn. So as JP said, don't come to my Twitter. I use it for other purposes. So let's talk in LinkedIn. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, and by the way, for everyone listening, big shout out to Jin Kim, George Spafford, Kevin Baer, the authors of the Phoenix Project. Big shout out to Jez Humble, Damon Edwards, and the team.
John Willis.
John Willis, of course, the state of DevOps.
Patrick DeBoy. So many people. Like
as JP mentioned, the godfather of DevOps, Patrick DeBoy, what a guy. All great resources online. You can search and Google for them and find out so much more than you ever thought you would want to know. I'm Andi Mann. I'm at sageable.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as Andi Mann. I'm on Mastodon as Andi Mann at masto.ai. Find me anywhere. I'm not choosy. Guys, it's been a pleasure to chat with you both, and we'll do it again sometime. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'll talk to you soon.